Money doesn't just come from one place. It drips, trickles, flows, and floods into our lives in different ways. Welcome to Drip, Trickle, Flow, Flood, a podcast that explores the power of multiple income streams. Hey, Tony, how you doing?
Great. How are you today, Melissa?
Pretty good. Getting ready to
Going-
have a nice long weekend.
Oh yeah, it's Labor Day. Yeah,
Recording.
we go to an annual pig roast, and there's a
Ooh,
cornhole tournament tomorrow. So one of the most fun weekends of the year.
that's right up your alley too, with your yard games.
Yeah, we haven't got into that, although I think we are gonna have an episode coming up where maybe we dive into yard games.
Yes.
I don't bring it up too much because that would consume the entire episode. But yes, I like yard games, and having a cornhole weekend is pretty fun.
We could talk about it a bit in this episode because we're going to talk about some side hustles, particularly one that I started. So we could talk about your yard games as well. But before we get into that, we have a fun announcement to make.
Yeah,
Tell
we
everybody.
are going to start clothing our listeners. We're going to get some apparel going, and some of it will be, I think, just the logo or whatever. But then we also have some fun sayings that we're going to put on the shirts and try to not only get some chuckles and whatever, but maybe spur conversations out there in the world about finances. Really excited about that. Stay tuned. By the time this episode airs, actually, the site might actually be up. It's going to be at thepridshopdesign.com is where our apparel will be for sale, but we'll put links and things like that.
Yay. And we'll also be doing a contest to win a shirt too.
Yeah, yet to be created. So if anybody has any contest ideas,
Yeah, that'll be fun to come up with ideas for how people can enter, especially. So we're working on that, but we're excited to be expanding our podcast and message with this cool merch line. And I'm excited to wear one of these shirts because they're going to be funny.
Yeah. And I think that's something maybe we should talk to the audience about, because we're gaining listeners, we're getting some traction, we're getting some positive feedback, which is really exciting. But I think when you and I started this, we weren't really sure where it was going to go. We actually had a different idea of where it was going to go, and it's really exciting. And as we grow some things, we want to be real transparent with the audience of what's happening and how we're doing things, and the behind the scenes of the drip, trickle, flow, flood of drip, trickle, flow, flood. And it's obviously in its infancy now, but we're going to start moving in that direction.
Yeah.
Today, let's talk about your new gig, because everybody knows that what you need is another hustle.
I know. Too many hustles. I'll give a little update first, because when we started this podcast, I believe is when I first starting my pen name. So I have a pen name that I don't reveal on this podcast, but it's in the romance genre. And I was just getting started at the time. And now I have grown that. It was definitely a drip at the time. It's definitely a trickle now. Maybe some people would consider it a flood, but it's consistent income. And it's been really fun because I was able to put that together and the model of it and what that looks like. And now have I'll put this in air quotes for obviously no one can see because we're a podcast, but in air quotes, I'm putting passive income because it's never truly passive. Obviously, I am doing things to market my books. So it is not purely passive, but there are some passive elements to it in that once you write a book, it exists, right? And it can sell with your active marketing, but also sometimes without, because your marketing can pay off like months and sometimes even years down the line. So Tony has a book out as well. He can sell copies of his book without like physically going and saying, "Hi, will you buy my book?" So there's like some passivity to it. However, it's still coming from like an active piece. So because of that, I found I had a little bit of extra time in my schedule. And the previous episode to this, you'll all have met my husband. So it might make sense to you all. He is somebody who is like always on the go. He's always moving and shaking. So we're just like a busy household. We always have different stuff popping that keeps us interested. I started a new, what I'll call, it actually was never a trickle. I'm sorry, it was never a drip. It was a trickle right away and is quickly turning into a flow. But it's because I'm starting on like third base rather than first base. And I'll explain why and what that is. I started getting into something called user generated content, or the abbreviation is UGC for people who come from like the advertising world. And it's essentially falls over like underneath influencer content creation, where a brand hires you to make a video for them about their product or service or brand as a whole. And then they use that video either in paid advertising, which is the most likely case that they use it, or they use it in like organic excuse me, in an organic way, which would be like using it on their TikTok or Instagram or Facebook or something like that. But the majority of the time they're using it for paid advertising. And the reason that they do that is because that type of content converts a lot better than traditionally filmed commercial content, which would use an actor in it, right? User generated content is ideally like, here's this microphone that I use every day for the podcast, and it's awesome, and it makes our sound great. And I'm like authentically talking about it, look authentic. There's not perfect lighting. There's not a perfect setup in my background. It doesn't sound like an ad. It's just me chatting about how much I love this podcast mic. So that type of content converts very well online with buyers. So more and more brands are using that. So all that to say, I stumbled into this because I had a client who asked me to make a video for them. I do scripting for clients a lot because obviously I'm a script writer. And they were like, can you just record this on your iPhone? It's not a big deal. Don't worry. You don't need a tripod or anything. And I'm like, oh, yeah, sure. And I was familiar with what UGC was. So I just did it. And then I'm like, oh, wait a minute. They paid me for that, obviously. And I'm like, wait a minute. I think I can actually make money doing this. And not only does it combine my so I have a background in advertising and marketing. I have a background in script writing. I also, which I don't think anybody on this podcast knows unless you know me outside of this podcast, I also have quite a steep background in hosting and spokesperson work because I started my career in my early 20s as a guest host on QVC and doing
Know that.
and I
Is there, is there footage of that somewhere?
Yeah, I definitely have footage. So I used to do like lots of QVC local news appearances where I'd bring on like a bunch of products and be like, here's how this soda stream works. Like and just demo that on air on a local morning news program. And then I also did a number of commercial work where I was like an actor in that commercial. But anyway, back then.
Let's not gloss over this. Can we share these videos on our Substack?
No, yes, yes, we can. I have to really go into the archives. I will dig something up. There's actually a very funny commercial that I did. This was not spokesperson work. This was an actual commercial where I was acting, but it's probably the one we should share because it's absolutely ridiculous. It's for a kitchen company. And I'm like, the premise of the commercial is I'm having like a nightmare about my kitchen. And then I wake up and my kitchen is beautiful. And it's so poorly acted. It's terrible. But it converted so well for them that they used to play it during Monday Night Football. So this is back when I lived back east. So all of our friends were big fans of the Philadelphia Eagles. And so anybody that was watching the Eagles games were like playing drinking games to how much my commercial would come on. This went on for so long. This commercial haunted me. So I will dig that up and post that on our Substack for anybody that wants to watch. But yes, so
that sounds great. I haven't missed that many Monday Night Football games. I wonder if I saw it.
I don't think they probably were only playing it regionally because it was a Philadelphia-based company. So I'm assuming you probably wouldn't have seen it unless you're back in Philly or Jersey. But
okay, sorry. Okay, go on. So you saw this is a meshing of different skills you have and backgrounds you have. One question I have. So when you say, so you're promoting something for somebody else and you're actually physically the one that's doing the videoing or the recording of yourself. You're not videoing and recording them.
Correct. It is me. Most of the time they want a talking head. So you just your head on there and your words talking. Occasionally, you might layer your voice over some B-roll, which you also shoot. For example, I just did a dog treat one. So my dogs are also now influencers and earning money for our family. So at 13 years old, it took them long enough. But so we did something for a dog treat company. And so for that, I obviously shot a bunch of footage of them like eating the treats, running around in the park, things like that. And then I just overlaid my voice on that. And then I did a little bit of talking head in between. So yes, like the user piece of user generated content is that you fully create that yourself. You're filming it usually on an iPhone and you're editing if that is what the client requests.
So those of you that are like saying, I could never do this. I don't have any of those skills. Ditto. I wouldn't even know where to begin. So don't be intimidated by that. But the way you're making it sound is it doesn't sound like you need some expensive setup, and maybe the simplicity is really what's good about it.
Yeah. So it's very interesting because, again, it's supposed to look like I'm just the average person who is holding up my phone and snapping a selfie, right? Or like hitting the record button and talking into my phone. That's what actually converts. So if anything, it's better, right? When you are a bit more naive and don't have those skills, because it should look like very shaky camera off the cuff. Now, I will say though, if you're somebody who has no experience like at all with filming or editing or just like overall understanding of marketing and advertising, there's a lot of strategy to it. I know I'm probably making it sound easy, but remember, this is a culmination of a lot of skills I've built over a 20-year period. So it may be easy for me because of that, but there are lots of people who enter this space who go slow at it, right? It's just like new skills that they want to learn. There are lots of free ways you can learn. Lots of people make YouTube videos and things like that to teach you how to do it. And particularly if you are 50 and older, you can make a lot of money in this space because, and I vividly remember flashing back to when I was in my early 20s and I used to do this kind of work. However, at the time, we didn't have phones like the phones are today. People weren't running ads online, right? It was like me physically showing up at a studio somewhere in QVC, at the QVC studio or a news station. But back then, I remember doing a lot of jobs with people in their 50s and 60s, and they were booked and busy. They could command whatever price they wanted. And I was like, wow. And then my agent, I had an agent, talent agent at the time, who said to me, man, when you are 40, 50, 60, you're going to make so much money because you look like somebody everybody knows. So essentially, like what that means is if you have an average look, which I know you all aren't seeing me, but you can see my picture online or look me up. I have a very ordinary, like everyday look. And I've heard that my whole life where I'll just be in the grocery store. People will go, do I know you? And what's good about that in this case is that I'm very familiar, which immediately creates trust. Just my face, like just the familiarity of my face creates trust. So it works really well. If you are someone, let's say in your 40s, 50s, 60s and beyond, who has some interest in this kind of work, or maybe has an ad background, a business, like any kind of like corporate background where like you're used to speaking in front of people, leading a team, or maybe you've done like some workshops or presentations, just where you're like comfortable, right? Like doing things on camera or even like in front of a group of people, this can work really well. And if you don't mind getting through the technology bumps, right? Learning the technology, it is a really great side income to consider and could become your main income if you wanted it to be.
So how are you finding your clients, or how are they finding you?
Yeah, there are a number of apps that you can use. There are probably 15 or 20 different apps that you can join to find work. I went about it a little bit of a different way. I use Upwork, which is a common place that people find freelancers, and lots of people in this space do use that. However, I don't know if I just got lucky. I don't know if it's my age. I don't know if it's my look. I don't know if it's my samples. I'm not really sure. But I went on there, I did one job, and ever since then, I've just been getting inbound leads, which just means people reach out to me and I'm not actively pitching to jobs. Now, mind you, I'm only a month into this. and they're like longevity wise, I can't speak to that because I don't know, right? Like maybe I just am on a hot streak and then this is all going to peter out. I don't think so because obviously I have lots of strategy in place for that not to happen. But that is the direction that I went in. However, most of the people I know who do it are on a number of different apps. You can look them up. There's Join Brands is one, Fiverr is one. Gosh, I'm just blanking on them now. But if you just do a Google search and say apps to find UGC jobs, you will come up with a whole bunch of them. And there's a lot of places to find jobs. But again, I think if you're in a certain age group, right? If you're hitting that demographic, and that's not to say if you're younger and you want to do this, feel free. But I do think there's a little bit of magic if you're older because there's much less competition. Not a lot of people in their late 40s, 50s, 60s are doing this work. So your competition is mainly non-existent. And if you put effort into doing it right, then you're going to then also swallow up even more jobs.
So what's the finance look behind? Like, how do you set your rates? Do you go on there? People message you and say, hey, I'll pay you X to do this project. Or do you have your rate listed on there so they know, oh, I'm going to reach out to Melissa. I know already that I can afford her.
Yes, what I use is Upwork, so I have my rate listed. That's how that platform is set up. That's not the case on all platforms. Some platforms are set up where the brand dictates that and you just pitch yourself and it'll be right in the job ad, like how much they're going to pay. And there's all sorts of schools of thought on that. For example, there are a lot of people who want to get into UGC, user generated content, but only want to do, for example, beauty and skincare. Okay, that's a really hot area. There's a lot of competition in that space. So and the brands know that. So oftentimes they're not paying great rates up front because they know they can probably get away with working with you for just giving you some free product. I'll send you my $80 skincare product and you'll just make a video in exchange for that. Now, that's not of interest to me. I'm not saying I would never do skincare. In fact, I did book a couple of those jobs, but I don't go after that. I go after the spaces that have much less competition, which for me tends to fall in tech. So like software as a service and technology. So lots of people don't want to do those like service-based stuff because they find them boring. I find them great and they pay really well. And I have a tech background, so they can leverage off of my experience, my actual authentic experience. And also hair care has been my other big one. And I think that generally is just because I have pretty good hair. Or at least I can make it look good, let me say. If I put some effort into it, it looks voluminous when I do things with it. So I think you just have to find what is your unique selling point, right? What are your USP? What are your unique selling points or unique selling propositions? Can you do couples content? Do you have pets? Do you have kids that you don't mind putting in? There's all sorts of, once you start poking around out there, you'll see there are all sorts of jobs and opportunities and you can figure out like what do you enjoy and what do you have that maybe not a huge portion of the population has.
This is an interesting thing, right? Because you could envision, all right, college kid could do this probably from their dorm,
Yes.
make a little bit of extra money. We had Jessie on a few episodes ago, and she was talking about just process of being a creative and also trying to survive, this is, in my opinion, still a creative endeavor. And
Yes.
it's certainly something that maybe someone is trying to get. It doesn't even have to be a creative, right? But you're trying to get into some career, you're trying to do whatever, or maybe you want to you got a kid on the way, or you got a kid you got to pay for college or their car, or you're trying to retire soon, or maybe it's supplementing retirement income. It seems like this is a pretty interesting way where people can do it. And I think you have this skill set. I think it's a very interesting thing for people to think about, right? If you have this skill set or this group of skills, what is out there that you can do to create a drip, trickle, flow, or maybe even a flood? And how can that integrate into your life? And we've talked to a lot of people on this podcast that have the multiple income streams. And I think that's what this is based on. We're attracting those people, but a lot of people don't. And a lot of people, it's because they don't know how or why, or it seems intimidating. These are skills that you built over 20 years that you're just now really meshing together. And maybe you could do some handyman work, or maybe like my freelance writing is a side income. My sports coaching is very much a side income. So it's, what skills do you have? Actually, in my business coaching is really a side income also. So it's like, what experiences do you have and what can you do? And I think it's awesome that you found, it seems like a really good opportunity to compound on these skills you've grown. So
Yeah.
it's cool that you're taking this. It sounds like it's currently a trickle, but seems like it's heading towards a flow if you want to put the time into it.
Yeah. It could definitely be. I think initially I wasn't thinking of it that way, but I do think my goal now is to turn it into a flow because I can see how to expand and scale it. I can also scale it with my husband because if you're a man, there are not many men in this space.
Mm.
And so there are a lot of jobs and not a lot of guys doing it. Again, like it's a good, so I just already told him, I'm like, you're just going to stand there and I'm going to write the script and you're just going to say, and I've already put him in a few of them. And I'm like, it's very funny because I'll just be like, no, move there, go there. That was a bad take. I'm like a very mean director, but no, we have fun with it. But, and also like couples content. So if you can do things together as a couple, so it would be great for you and Lindsay, Tony, because you guys could do the travel, like the travel space
Yeah,
plus.
we'd love. Yeah, that's cool. I never even thought of that. Lindsay has some experience with promoting kind of her own brand when she was
Yep.
doing her clothes and some stuff. Yeah, whether we could do it together or not, she's been my videographer for my yard game videos. And sometimes I annoy her in that process. But yeah,
It's
yeah, I
fun.
love that idea. I think that's super fun. Yeah, for those of you who don't know, travel is something that, yeah, Lindsay and I love to do. I try to go see new things as often as possible.
I think it's just like a cool, even if it's not this, even if people aren't interested in user generated content, it's like you said, Tony, like there are some really intriguing side hustles out there that maybe you just keep as a drip or a trickle, or maybe you want to turn into your flow. But I think what struck me about this angle for myself is that it really was a culmination of a lot of my skills that I had built over 20 years. And I just tripped into it. But I do think that like we could all be more intentional as like looking at all maybe it's even just sitting down for an hour and saying, what are all the skills I've built over the last 15, 20 years of my life? And then of that are what's out there? Like, what are some ways that I could make money? So, like you said, you really enjoy coaching. So that was like a culmination, I'm sure, of multiple skills and interests that you had that converged together to make you say, oh, yeah, I would be a good coach. I would be good at that. Or I'd love to try that.
And yeah, I mean, I thought coaching was going to be fun when I was working at the Boys and Girls Club. That was one of my goals, was to start coaching, and I was able to do that. The first time that I got paid for coaching was almost an accident. The local high school needed a head track coach. And Lindsay goes, "You should apply for this. They need a coach." And I go, I've never coached high school or varsity or anything like that. I never even coached track. And she goes, "Yeah, but you ran track and you've coached a lot of basketball and baseball and stuff." And I go, "Yeah, I guess I could apply." And so I apply and did the interviews and everything. And the athletic director calls me up. And goes, "This is not normal, but you didn't get the job?" I go, "Oh, okay. But would you want to be an assistant coach? You could be the spring coach." And I go, "I guess so. Who got the job?" And he told me it was Coach Gray, and he'd been coaching he's like, "Yeah, he's got a little more experience." I'm like, "A little? He's been coaching basketball for 20 years at the school. So he's got a lot more." But I said, "Yeah." And that was my first gig coaching, getting paid coaching. And then I ended up coaching high school cross country, and then girls high school basketball, and then some boys high school basketball. But then I've demoted myself, or not even demoted myself, but switched to junior high sports because they take a far less time,
Okay.
and it's a really fun age. But yeah, that was a long-winded. You just don't necessarily know how things are going to come about. And I think that's the other thing, is being open to trying something. And if it doesn't work out or you don't like it, if it's a side hustle, you can stop whenever you want.
Yeah. I guess it's similar to my husband who was in the last episode as well. Like he tripped into pickleball coaching, which is now definitely a flow, 100% a flow. But that wasn't intentional. He didn't seek that out. He didn't say, "Oh, this is a rising sport and I have a giant racket sport background and I want to do that." It was him just going to play for fun and people going, "Who are you? You
Right,
teach
yeah.
me how to do that?" I think you were one.
I was, yeah. No, because I was like, I had played pickleball and I grew up playing tennis and ping pong. So I'd get on the court and I could usually hang with whoever. Most people were very inexperienced or had never played before. And they're like, "Oh man, you're good." And then I got on the court with Gary, and he's very nice. So he wasn't just mopping the floor. He was like toying with me like a cat with a kitten. And then now Gary's out there coaching everybody. Now everybody I play, they're a lot better than they once were. The competition has really risen up, and my skill set hasn't really changed much. But
Is your dad mopping the floor with you now?
I think I can still beat my dad. My dad takes
Okay.
lessons from Gary. I think I can still beat him, but he keeps improving. I do. He's got 30 years on me. So that's still a little advantage.
There you go. You have the youth on your side, the youth on your side. But yeah, there's so many different, I think, interesting ways to bring in drips or trickles, or more than that if you want to. And so I feel like the lesson for the audience is just look at all the things, all the skills you've built, all the interests that you have, and see if there are like any like converging circles across that when you're brainstorming, because there are so many very cool things out there to do.
Yeah. So we're going to wrap up here quickly, but how is this going to play with the rest of your world? And I know this summer you were slammed with writing deadlines. You have a lot of different occupations, I guess, maybe the best way to put it. How does this, you're not having maybe to spend as much time on your pen name stuff right now. Are you going to do this, ramp it up when you have time away from the other things, or are you going to intentionally do less of some of the other stuff?
Yeah, that's a good question. One thing is that I wrapped up a big script project. So that went like much more smoothly than I thought it would. Generally, those don't go very smoothly. So if you screenwriters out there, you will feel me. This one did. So that means that I have an nice opening in my schedule because that wrapped up. And I got that other revenue stream, which is my pen name books, going. So because I'm not actively building that, I've built it and I just now have to maintain it. That then takes like less time and energy on my side. So I actually am going to devote a lot of time to this in the fall for a couple of reasons. One, I see the potential in it. I think that there's a lot of opportunity there, and I'm starting off hot. So I don't want to, I want to keep the fan the flames and just keep that going. And so another thing is we're talking about this is advertising for products and services. And we are moving into a hot buying season, which is the holidays, right? So I want to capitalize on just that trend of more and more brands are going to need to run ads this time of year than any other time. And so I should be here when those jobs are coming. So I definitely want to take advantage of that timing of things. And also I really do want to build out some stuff for Gary and I together because you'll have heard in the last episode, my husband has a lot of interests. He is not somebody that's going to sit there and watch television or read a fiction book. He just isn't into that, or watch sports or whatever. He plays sports, but he doesn't watch them. And so what he does with all that extra time is he usually acquires skills and gets like really geeky about it and goes deep. So he had a big spell of time for a couple of years where he got really into photography and videography. So we have all the professional equipment. We could shoot a film. Like we have all the same stuff that like my sets have. And so because of that, it's very silly because we have it and it's collecting dust now because we just don't use it. He's not actively been shooting anything. So we figured let's dust it off and then let's start using it for the two of us. And so I'm like going to be the producer and director here, but he's going to have to be some on-camera talent, which will be fun. And he's totally into. And we just see potential in it. I think it's silly not to do it and not to try it. So yeah, we're going to devote a good amount of time to it with the goal of making it a flow.
Yeah, that's awesome. I'm excited to see how it goes and learn more about it as it progresses.
Yeah, so Gary's going to be our on-camera diva now.
He's gonna be a star. I have no doubt.
He's a star. He's going to have a lot of demands. Yes. So that's where it's at. Well, I'll keep everyone posted. That's, I think, some of the fun of this podcast is that we can start things and keep everyone posted. And just like we're doing with our Drip, Trickle, Flow, Flood podcast, like we'll be keeping everyone abreast of what we're doing with it. Like now we're putting out merch, but we have some other goals of things that we're going to be doing. So we'll start to clue everybody in as we bring those to life. Yeah.
Great. This has been fun learning about this world. I admittedly knew very little about it. Now I know a little bit.
Yay. Thanks everybody for joining us today and hearing about this new little hustle of mine. If you enjoyed this episode, please rate and review on your favorite podcast platform. And we'll see you next time on Drip, Trickle, Flow, Flood. Thanks everybody.